So the word bully had its origins in love and friendship. Obviously that word has taken a completely 180-degree turn because now the Oxford English Dictionary defines the term bully as someone who uses fear to hurt other people and make them scared. In 1999, the Journal of American Medical Association came out with an article entitled "To Err is Human." It was a revolutionary article that shone a light on the potential effect of medical errors on the population of a death of up to 98,000 individuals each year. The basis of that article was transformative in healthcare, and it's where we start today. But today, we're here to talk about the bullies of the hospital. Not the CFO, not the night nurse manager, no. We're going to talk about those microscopic organisms that wreak havoc on patients and on your quality rankings. We're here to talk about the bullies of the hospital, germs. In the mid-1800s, women started giving birth in hospitals. And in Hungary, there was a hospital by the name of Vienna General Hospital. And at that hospital, there actually were 2 maternity wards. So it was a brand new specialty. Obstetrics and gynecology is recognized by medicine. And in these 2 wards, one was run by Dr. Joseph Spath, and the other was run by Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis. And because it's such a long name and I only have 18 minutes, I've shortened it to Iggy. So the 2 wards were there, and the women in the streets would be coming in, and they would only want to go to Dr. Spath's ward, because only 2 out of 100 women died of puerperal fever in his ward. Whereas over in Iggy's ward, 28 out of 100 women died of puerperal fever. A significant difference. And you can imagine a mother, as she's going into labor, will use every opportunity for creative self-preservation that she can. So they would be begging at the registration desk. They would be pleading to go to what I term as the life ward. They would, if they got sent over to the death ward, they'd go back out and give a street birth instead of risking their life, potentially. Well, this bothered Iggy tremendously. Not only personally, because he knew that there's got to be a way that puerperal fever could be thwarted, but also professionally, because you see, Iggy wanted to move up the hospital ladder. So he had to come up with a solution for what was going on here. And we know finding solutions sometimes is pretty difficult. Take the 1960s space race. The Soviet Union and the United States were in a rush to get to space, see who could get there first. They had the rockets, they had the know-how, they had the ability to get there, but they were missing a vital ingredient. They could not figure out how to push the ink through the end of a pen in 0 gravity so that it could document all the cool things that they were seeing out their window. So they had this stumbling block. So what did they do? They spent millions of dollars, countless brain hours, trying to come up with a solution for this. And over in the Soviet Union, one brave soul, and that soul who I think probably had the most common sense, stood up and said, "What about a pencil?" So imagine the deflated egos, because I'm thinking, these are rocket scientists, right? It's a lot of smart people. And they were so busy thinking outside of the box and looking for these huge ideas of things that they could do, then they forgot what was in the box still, and the basis of a pen was a pencil, a writing utensil. Now that story is a little bit of an urban legend. Yes, there was a race to space. Yes, they used pencils in space. But independently, Paul Fisher developed the space pen. And by 1969, both the Soviet Union and the United States were using that pen in space. You can get your own, about $2.95 on the internet. Problem is, you got to spend about $200 grand to get on one of Richard Branson's galactic cruisers to make sure it works. So let's go back to Iggy. You know, he's got to come up with a solution for this problem that he sees. So there's the 2 wards. There's the life ward and the death ward. And they're both just giving birth to babies, right? So he took his charter, and think of it like Survivor. Familiar with Survivor, that show puts 2 groups of random people on an island, some obscure island, and whoever lives to the end gets $1 million. So this is, 19th century Survivor. And he's looking at the wards, he's looking at the linens, he's looking at what the women ate that day, he's looking at the time of day, the temperature in the room, the tools that are used, everything around that. The only non-common denominator that he came up with were the people delivering the babies. You see, in the life ward, it was midwives delivering the baby, whereas over in the death ward, it was medical students and doctors delivering the babies. So boom, challenge 1 completed. He's on his way. So he takes his time and he follows the midwives. He watches what they're doing every day, what their process is, what they eat for lunch, what the latest gossip is. He sees how they handle it. he goes over and he watches the medical students and doctors, and he follows them. He sees who's going in the on-call room, who's not going in the on-call room, who's going in the on-call room together. So he's just watching everything that's going on. And at this time, autopsy became a practiced science. So it's every chance that these physicians and medical students had, they would go and perform autopsies. And so as he's watching them, one of the physicians got called, and as every doctor should, when a woman goes into labor, they put whatever they're doing down and they go to that woman's side. And he noticed, perhaps it was some of the debris on their hands from the cadavers or clothes that they were taking all the way over to the patient and perhaps passing on a germ and causing puerperal fever and potentially death. Challenge 2. He got it. He was so excited. So what happened while this was going on? He knew that he had these two problems. He'd gone through his steps. So how do I solve it? Well, latex wasn't in the form of gloves yet, so he couldn't put gloves on him. Maybe a plastic bubble around the patient. There's no human contact. That's kind of hard when you're birthing a baby. It's a whole cut the cord thing. It'd be difficult. He had it. A lime and chlorinated solution, and he would squirt it on their hands. He would instruct them to make their hands do a friction motion underneath water, get all the nooks and crannies, shake them, use a sterile towel, and then hold their hands up and go over to their patient and deliver the baby. What's that process called? Hand washing. Exactly. That was his solution. So while Iggy was doing his study to find out what was going on, in 1846, 459 women died in the death ward. 1847, he implemented this solution. 45 women died. That's some good evidence. So he went and rushed to his superior, Professor Klein. And do as I do, imagine Professor Klein with a monocle and a very clean beard, very good, crisp suit. And he shares with him his ideas. And then Professor Klein looks at him and he says, Iggy, doctors and gentlemen, we do not pass germs on to our patients, nor do we need to wash our hands. He was crestfallen. But he did not know that in this game of 19th century survivor, that Professor Klein was his main competitor. Because Professor Klein also had an aspiration of going up the ladder. So he suggested to the board that they have bad air in the death ward, because back then cholera and a lot of air spread diseases were going on. So he suggested a very expensive ventilation system be put into the hospital. No clinical evidence, no medical evidence to prove that either bad air caused puerperal fever or that a ventilation system would actually have the same results as Iggy did with his hand washing. So combine the fact that doctors were gentlemen, they don't wash their hands. Professor Klein wanted a ventilation system, and Iggy's brothers got involved in civil politics, and there was an uprising in Hungary at the time, and guilt by association. Iggy got voted off the island by his board. Iggy went on. He went to France. He went to England. He had a little bit more interaction and people agreeing a little bit more with his theory. He became so focused on stopping puerperal fever that he got dementia. His family ended up admitting him against his will into an insane asylum. And because it was against his will, he suffered a severe beating and got a germ on him, caused an infection, and he died of sepsis. It's a sad story, but what he started is what's important. Let's go back to the idea of the technologies and the things that are out there that are available to help. I mean, everybody's out there fighting hospital-acquired infections. For SSIs, there's a New England Journal of Medicine study that shows that 2% chlorhexidine and 70% isopropyl alcohol reduces SSIs by 41%. There's silver-coated catheters to reduce UTIs. There's CLABSI. There's hubs that are flat so that the germ can't get inside of that hub and into the patient. There are ways to take hospital-acquired infections down with all these technologies. There's surveillance tools. So it can watch where the infection starts in the hospital, what therapies are working against it, what therapies aren't, and how to change it so that you can take that infection out, lower your length of stay for your patient, have a better outcome for your patient as well. How many of you, growing up, wanted to be doctors? Yeah? How many want to be hospital administrators and in IT? How many want to be an Olympic gymnast? So I have a 4-year-old, and every week he wants to be something different. Last week he wanted to be a veterinarian, and he wanted to move to Asia because he had heard that the panda bears were throwing up all over the place. And he wanted to I don't know where he gets it. This week he came in from the backyard, and he was digging up worms, and I thought, oh great, we're still on the veterinarian path. No, he was killing the worms as soon as they got air. But he comes in, he's covered in mud, and he says, Mommy, I want to be a doctor. I did what I'm sure Dr. Velasco's mom did, was just like, oh, so good. And then I remembered everything that I've been talking about here today, and I, being his mother, had the ability to say, buddy, we can practice right now. Go wash your hands. So the current statistics, World Health Organization did a study, 2009, they started with a baseline. They had 26% compliance in hand hygiene in the ICU and 36% compliance in all non-ICU areas in the hospital. They implemented a hand hygiene project and education throughout the hospital. Within a year, in 2010, those numbers spiked. 37% hand hygiene compliance in the ICU and 51% compliance in the non-ICU areas. It's great. But here's the kicker. They broke it down. Nurses had a 50% compliance rate. So it's 50-50. It's pretty good for women. Physicians, 15% compliance rate. So when I saw that statistic, I looked at it and I said, wait a minute, am I still back in Iggy's time? Am I looking back in the 1840s still? Because are they still gentlemen and they can't, wash their hands and see the studies and see how everything works? And I realized, no, it was still in 2011. There are 1.7 million hospital-acquired infections every year in the United States alone. Of that number, 100,000 people die. I've been personally touched by that, and I'm sure every person in this room has a story of a friend or a family member who's been touched by an infection in the hospital. $8.5 to $11 billion of healthcare dollars goes to hospital-acquired infections every year. So if there's one thing that I would like you to remember today, is first off, how long did I spend washing my hands? Minute?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Not very long.
15 seconds. 15 seconds, the required amount of time that the CDC has for every clinician and physician to wash their hands prior to every patient encounter. 15 seconds. We talked about the definition of the word bully. Imagine what could be talked about in that time. Just getting to know the patient. So what I'd like you to take away today is, number one, get to simple. Innovation is out there, and you're going to hear a lot of great things today. And those big ideas are what continue to make us grow as a society, as a culture, and help patients out, which is the end goal. But get to simple. Don't forget common sense. Because sometimes it's that common sense, and listen to that voice in your head, that could actually be the big idea. And 3, if you have aspirations of going up the leadership ladder in the hospital, make sure your family members don't get involved in any civil uprisings. Might mess our chances up. The point is coming around from all of these great technologies that are available to fight HAIs, and you're implementing in your hospital because you know that your survivor council isn't just your hospital board, but it's also pay for performance, CMS, it's your patients. Instead of the people out on the streets having to have the conversation about what's happening in the death ward, it's a click of a mouse because all of that reportable data is going to come back, and those patients are going to be able to look at every hospital, down to every physician, and compare locally, regionally, nationally, where you sit. And they'll be able to make the choice as to who they vote off the island. Because you can put every one of those technologies in place that I talked about. You can have the surveillance technologies going in, and you are fighting, and oh, so many hospitals they're really taking their rates down, and they're doing everything they possibly can, but they keep getting reports back, and those reports say that hospital-acquired infections continue to happen. So what are they going to do? Are they just going to throw their hands up in the air and give up? Are they going to realize the bullet's in their hands?